Hi, I'm Darshi. I want to talk about a build that I think is underperforming, Heal Bladesworn. Want to talk about its design, what's kind of gone into that, what could be improved to help it function a little better, because as far as boon providers go, it's a build that basically can't break into the heal meta for a couple of reasons, outside of a couple niche uses. Overall, I'm going to be covering the trait design of Bladesworn, how that goes into Heal Bladesworn setups, specifically the trade-offs that it has to deal with, what it ends up losing to be a Bladesworn, what it gets in return, and the overall support deficit that it's got versus Berserker. Specifically, the boon output, the healing that it can give its team, cleansing conditions, the utility that both builds can offer, and trade interactions. Going to cover the upsides of a Heal Bladesworn as well, and some proposed changes that'll go into those builds that can help bring Bladesworn up to compete with other healers in the game, see a little more play. Now, one of the big drawbacks that's often touted is the Grandmaster trait design for Bladesworn. Immortal Dragon, the top option, gives you a lifesteal on your Dragon Trigger. It self-sustains, it gives you prot. The middle trait is the one that does the good things. It gives you 20 might, it gives you a 5-second stun, makes it unblockable and unblindable. Extremely good value. And then there's Daring Dragon, which doesn't do any of that and lowers your damage but does alacrity. These are a little strange, and definitely a drawback for sure. But that isn't the thing that brings Heal Bladesworn to the level it's at, on its own anyway. That goes to this trait, Gun X Sword. This is the first minor trait that a lot of elite specs see that switches up your profession mechanic. It gives you the new stuff. It takes away some stuff if it needs to. And this one takes away a bunch. Your F1 is no longer a burst skill. It switches to your gun saber when you're in combat. You can't weapon swap, and your adrenaline is now flow. It's a 0 to 100 meter. And you have a new F2 button. It does Dragon Trigger, which is a new burst skill kit thing. That's a lot of change for a warrior to go through, and there are some negative downstream effects of that when you're trying to put together a heal build. So, want to focus on that second weapon set for a moment. The second weapon set on the warrior, the first was going to be Staff. Staff has a ton of healing on it, really hard to go without that most of the time. But the second one, that would have a warhorn in it basically all the time, and you'd have either a mace, a dagger, or a sword equipped. Usually a mace, but the other ones also had a place. So first, Warhorn. Warhorn's got 2 skills, Charge, Call of Valor. First one, that's Swiftness, 4 seconds of Quickness, and cleanses all movement affecting conditions. Call of Valor cleanses 3 of any kind of condition, and does Vigor and a nice meaty barrier on it. These 2 alone are doing a lot of good for a heal warrior setup, and are going to be the only source of Swiftness and Vigor. Then the main hand slot. You could either have a mace, a dagger, or a sword here. Axe wasn't really that great. The mace and dagger both lend themselves to helping with CC. They both have a 3 skill that does a small one on there. The mace burst as well. We'll get to that. And sword's good for mobility. You can jump around if you need to be doing some sort of kiting business as a healer. And burst skills. We lose these, of course. This is a pretty big one for your mace. Your Defiance Break 300 on Skullcrack just isn't there if you're a Bladesworn anymore, which hurts even more because we are also taking Daring Dragon and missing out on 500. If you were using a dagger, you cannot Boon Rip anymore. You don't get Breaching Strike. Your sword can't immobilize enemies anymore, and this is all hypothetical. This impacts the main set too. Regeneration and healing on Path to Victory just can't... We don't get it. You can't cast the skill. Our weapon set has no regeneration because we can't use the burst. We're stuck running Banner of Defense just to get it. But we're a Heal Bladesworn. What do we get in return? we get the Gun Saber. We get Flow instead of Adrenaline. This is actually a meaningful one. It's easy to have positive flow, keep feeding the skills. Berserker has to pay a lot of attention to Adrenaline. We get a Dragon Trigger and style points. Bladesworn's flashy as hell. I do like playing it a lot for that, but style points alone can't save the class. So first up, the Gun Saber. Gun Saber's role for Heal Bladesworn is mostly just a cooldown reduction tool, because it's got 4 ammo skills, 3 of which interact with Lush Forest, and 1 of which is bugged. Your autos don't do anything for the build, unfortunately, but your 2 skill resets your cooldowns by 1 second because it's an ammo skill, as long as it was the first cast of the ammo. So if you had 2 charges. Your 3 skill does 200 Defiance Break, 300 after the proposed buff that's currently in the wings, but it's bugged with Lush Forest right now and doesn't reduce cooldowns. Cyclone Trigger reduces cooldowns. Break Step reduces cooldowns. There is no support on the weapon. Now, it wouldn't necessarily be that big of a deal if we had a couple skills that weren't support relevant, but given this has taken the place of our second weapon set, that's pretty major, especially when you compare it to other specializations kit swaps that they get access to, like these ones, which do a lot and don't cost the second weapon set for those professions. But that's not the end of it. We do have a second kit. We have Dragon Trigger. Dragon Trigger is basically just a damage tool, unfortunately. Also, we can't stun enemies with it because we use the wrong trait for that. Only the DPS trait gets to have a 5-second stun on it. Ours does a damage number and nothing else. We get access to a very short-range teleport and an Aegis skill, though, which technically helps with tanking and positioning, but doesn't really offer that much for a support build, unfortunately. So we are operating at a deficit here. By taking a Bladesworn, Heal Bladesworn, and going through a couple of trade-offs here, we are down regeneration that we have to patch up by taking a utility skill locked to our bar. We're down swiftness that eats up our relic slot with Relic of Febe in order to bring it for our group. We're down vigor and have no way to get it back. We're short 2 cleanse skills we would have otherwise had. We're down about a 4k barrier off a Call of Valor. Almost all of the build's CC is just gone. We have 200, or 300 to be soon, from Artillery Slash, and then that's it. There's a utility skill we can take for that, but given the situation here, utility skills are a hot commodity. We might not even have room for it. We've lost mobility and boon removal options for the build, with sword, with breaching strike on the dagger, that those just aren't things we can do. And we've lost a notable amount of healing output, especially with the Staff Burst not being available, and Dragon Trigger and Gunsaber just not healing people. In return, we have Alacrity instead of Quickness, a short-range Blink, a lot of Self-Aegis to make ourselves more tanky, and cooldown reduction. There are some high points. Bladesworn's cooldown reduction is actually pretty good, and Heightened Focus, Discipline trait, it's a healing modifier. Berserker really doesn't want to take it most of the time because it suffers for adrenaline if it does, but Bladesworn can feed that trait no problem. That Self-Aegis does come in pretty handy if you end up tanking on this build. It does get some mobility skills back. Dragon Trigger 2, the boost, and Break Step are pretty good. And Electric Fence is a good skill. It's got Projectile Heat on Warrior. There are only 2 skills that do it, and one of them is Winds of Disenchantment. So it's pretty nice to have it. It's pretty nice to have it as an ammo skill as well that can be reloaded. But that's not really enough. On the boon front, this one is relatively simple. We're missing 3 of them. We're short Swiftness, Vigor, and Regeneration. We attach them somehow to Gunsaber or to Dragon Trigger on Bladesworn so that those skills become support relevant and worth casting for more than just the cooldown reduction. and flesh out the build a little more so that it covers more and doesn't have to take a locked util slot just to cover regen. As for the build's healing output, Bladesworn does have passable healing. It's got enough to get by, but it is still low compared to other heal builds, and considering that's such a huge strength for Berserker, this could be a point of bringing it up as well. Gunsaber especially is a notable place on this. Staff has almost all the actual healing that Bladesworn does, and Gunsaber just recharges your cooldowns. So putting smaller heals and smaller barrier skills in Gunsaber could help the build sustain allies, get back to the staff where their big healing is potentially, and also making Dragon Trigger a big heal based on your charges spent on it can also help the skill feel strong for a non-DPS build, since charging your Gunsaber up for a big slash on the heal build is more or less not necessary or helpful. So giving this some way to actually convert flow into healing will be much more helpful for just the build's performance and the build's feel. And as for Condition Cleanse, we're short of Warhorn. We've lost 2 skills that cleanse. Gunsaber, Dragon Trigger, Armaments, none of those cleanse any conditions. Putting a little bit of cleanse somewhere in Bladesworn's kit will help it go a while to be a fully fleshed out healer. Doesn't really matter where, just getting 1 more really could be enough. Relying less on Shake It Off to cleanse a little bit, or being able to put them together for more coverage, will make the build feel good. We would also need to increase the CC output of Heal Bladesworn on the next patch after changes at its absolute limit without dropping any boons. That's going to be taking Kick, casting max charges of Artillery Slash, and having a Paralyzation Sigil equipped. All of that together adds to 735. A Heal Chronomancer casting its Elite Signet does 720. That's not a whole lot compared to the competition, so it's going to need a little more to keep up. One way to do that would be to imply Unyielding Dragon's Stun to all Grandmaster trait variants in PvE, and to keep the value near 500 for Daring Dragon despite only having 5 charges. Bladesworn CC would still be lower than Berserker if you did this. Berserker is able to cast Skullcrack, Pummel Bash. It has multiple stun skills available in its rage skills. So this doesn't even meet the level that a Berserker could potentially do, but it does put 500 on one skill and make it the skill that feels good to CC with. Also, maybe go back and look at Artillery Slash again. The old version let you split CC among different targets, which did feel good. Not a hard push for this one though, but it would be nice. Now, there were a couple suggestions I did want to shout out as well. Costa Primo is another contributor to Snowcrows. He does a bunch of benchmark videos. A bunch of them are for Condition Berserker, does a bunch of testing for other warrior builds as well. He put together a spreadsheet that I liked a bunch for some rework ideas for Bladesworn as a whole. A bunch of them were focused on a ranged setup for Bladesworn as well, since a lot of the class's identity is with ranged stuff, like the ranged versions of the Gunsaber skills and the ranged Dragon Trigger. Now, he did have a whole segment of that, of a set of 3 traits that would be set for healing, turning flow into supportive effects and boons onto the Gunsaber. I liked it a bunch. I'm going to be linking that spreadsheet in the description as well. Of note though, first off, Lush Forest is a really strong trait in principle. The overall cooldown reduction of it, when you are proccing it right, when you're doing it often, is greater than the cooldown reduction of improved Alacrity. So, given a really strong suite of Warrior and Bladesworn skills, this would become a very strong setup very quickly. So, when making balance changes, for Heal Bladesworn especially, it will be necessary to remember this as part of it, because if it's given the same level of skill value, it will achieve more with them because it can cast them more. Additionally, any utility that you add to a Gunsaber skill, since they all have ammo, tactical reload is going to make that stronger since you're able to do it more as well. So it's going to be necessary to keep that in check as well. Anyway, share this with your friends. I'd like people to see this. Because I like the build and I don't like playing it if I ever see a Defiance bar. Thanks.